tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
It's Saturday the 20th of January. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was a week that saw a Rwanda rebellion fizzle out, airstrikes on Houthi rebels, President Zelensky in Davos, and awards season in full swing.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
This week saw the Tory party tying itself in knots over the Safety of Rwanda bill, which returned to the Commons for its third reading on Wednesday. Rishi spent most of the week facing down a group of rebel right-wing Tories led by former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. They were intent on adding amendments to the bill designed to toughen up the legislation and reduce the avenues for migrants to appeal. The issue was that those amendments might bring the bill into conflict with the European Court of Justice. On Monday, Rishi was putting a brave face on the matter, claiming that his party was united in their desire to make the Rwanda scheme work.
The Conservative Party are completely united in wanting to stop the boats. We share the frustration of the British people about this situation. That's why I set it out as one of my 5 priorities. We're all fed up with this legal merry-go-round of challenges to our Rwanda policy.
Things escalated on Tuesday evening as 60 Tory rebels moved to force through amendments on the Rwanda bill. The bill was due for its third reading and a vote on Wednesday, but Robert Jenrick and his crew of hardliners were determined to toughen up the bill with a series of amendments. Tuesday night saw 2 deputy chairmen of the Tory party resign, with Brendan Clark-Smith and 30p Lee Anderson both stepping down from their roles in protest. Anderson, who is also a GB News presenter, spoke to the channel afterwards and said he won't rest until people who arrive illegally have no rights.
I don't think I could carry on in my role when I fundamentally disagree with the bill. And I can't be in a position to vote for something which I don't believe in.
Downing Street appeared relatively unconcerned, although it would take only 29 rebels to sink the small boats bill. Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg said the rebels were just trying to push Rishi and the government to do what people want.
What we're doing is encouraging the government to move in the right direction. The government already has moved a long way in the right direction. So although this bill may not be perfect, it's a long way away from where we would have been a couple of years ago.
In the end, much like the Rwanda scheme itself, the latest Tory rebellion over it never really got off the ground, and the bill passed its third reading on Wednesday evening.
The ayes to the right, 320. The noes to the left, 276. The ayes have it, look!
It had all made for a ridiculous spectacle as the Tory party tied itself in knots over a scheme that seems unlikely to work in practice. At Prime Minister's Questions time, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was scathing in his assessment of the Tory side and the fact that as Chancellor Rishi dismissed the Rwanda scheme as unworkable.
When he sees his party tearing itself apart, hundreds of bald men scrapping over a single broken comb, doesn't he wish he'd had the courage to stick to his guns?
You think that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak should have been celebrating as the Safety of the Rwanda bill passed its third reading in the Commons. Instead, he plunged himself into a new battle, this time with the House of Lords, who were next to consider the bill. He held a most unusual press conference on Thursday morning at which he urged the Lords to pass the bill swiftly so that he can still promise flights leaving to Rwanda this spring.
The treaty with Rwanda is signed and the legislation which deems Rwanda a safe country has been passed unamended in our elected chamber. There is now only one question. Will the opposition in the appointed House of Lords try and frustrate the will of the people, or will they get on board and do the right thing?
His plea fell on deaf ears, appearing to almost immediately backfire as various Lords referred to his press conference as bizarre, vacuous and simply weird before they agreed a 2-month timetable to review the details of the bill. That means the earliest it could come to a vote is mid-March, and crossbench peer Lord Carlisle was scathing about the way the whole process has been run.
We've seen in various other countries the damage that's done when governments use perceived and often ill-judged political imperatives to place themselves above the courts. This is a step towards totalitarianism and an attitude that the United Kingdom usually deprecates.
Last Sunday saw thousands gather in protest to mark the 100th day of conflict in the Israel-Hamas war. Over 2 million people have been displaced, more than 24,000 killed, and 1% of the Gaza Strip's population wiped out since fighting began last October 7th. It followed 2 days of public hearings at The Hague after South Africa opened a genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. But Britain's Foreign Secretary David Cameron said the whole thing's nonsense.
I think the South African action is wrong. I think it's unhelpful. I think it shouldn't be happening. They are talking here about genocide. They're taking this case on the basis of genocide. And, to prove that, you've got to prove that there was intent.
Meanwhile, both the US and UK launched airstrikes across Yemen, targeting sites used by the Iranian-backed Houthis group. It was in response to a number of Houthi-led attacks on Red Sea vessels, which began after Israel's invasion of Gaza. And former MI6 head Sir Richard Dearlove says the UK government had no choice but to take military action.
I don't think that the government has any choice, and I'm rather disappointed to see that both France and Italy had been reluctant to associate themselves with this offensive.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was in the Commons on Monday to offer clarification on the UK's military action in coordination with the US, which saw airstrikes on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. He said that the UK had destroyed 13 targets at 2 sites, including an airfield and a cruise missile launcher, and he defended the action, which was taken without formal parliamentary approval.
It's right that we took proportionate targeted action against military targets. It was a last resort. It came after the end of exhaustive diplomatic activity, and now I think it's incumbent on the Houthis to recognise the international condemnation for what they're doing.
The intention was, in Rishi's words, to de-escalate the situation, but the Houthi forces fired a missile at a US warship on Sunday and struck a US-owned container ship on Monday, so it's clear that the situation remains volatile. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was backing the government action and said it's not always possible to convene Parliament for approval.
I think it's fundamentally different if there's a sustained campaign with the deployment of troops. And in those circumstances, I do think it's important that the Prime Minister of the day comes to Parliament with a viable case, setting out the legal basis for the action and getting the consent of Parliament to that intervention.
Tuesday saw the UN recognised government in Yemen call for the UK to support an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. That means both sides in Yemen's civil war are aligned on something for once, as the Houthi rebels continue to claim they are targeting Red Sea shipping as part of an effort to put pressure on Israel and its allies. Another missile was fired at a Greek ship on Tuesday, while the US carried out further airstrikes on an anti-ship ballistic missile launch site. Speaking in the House of Commons, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak wasn't willing to discuss any future UK strikes on Houthi targets.
What we conducted was intended as a single limited action, and of course we hope that the Houthis will now step back and end their reckless and destabilising attacks. But of course we will not hesitate to protect our security and our interests where required.
There was a further attack in the Red Sea on Wednesday with a vessel hit by a drone which caused a small fire. It came as the US formally designated the Houthi rebels as a specially designated terrorist group, with the National Security Council's John Kirby warning there would be no negotiations on the matter. In Gaza, medicine for Israeli hostages and Palestinian civilians arrived after a new deal was brokered by Qatar, but fighting continued, with Israel claiming to have killed another senior terrorist in a refugee camp near the city of Nablus. US Senator Bernie Sanders says the State Department has an obligation to ensure Israel complies with international law while using American-supplied munitions.
Much of the bombardment is happening right now with US arms and equipment. In other words, whether we like it or not, the United States is complicit in the nightmare that millions of Palestinians are now experiencing.
The crisis in the Middle East continued on Thursday as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a public statement rejecting the White House's proposed two-state solution and insisting that all territory west of the Jordan River would remain under Israeli security control. His remarks came in the wake of attacks launched by Iran on Pakistan and Kurdistan, which led to the deaths of 9 people, including a British Iraqi citizen. Iran says the strikes were aimed at terrorists, but UK Foreign Secretary Lord David Cameron was warning of repercussions.
The world is watching Iran and its influence over these proxies, but also the action it has been taking directly, and that people will draw their conclusions from the actions that they are taking, and they should expect a very strong response.
Pakistan responded with strikes in Iran targeting what it claims are terrorist hideouts in the Sistan or Baluchistan region, but Pakistan's Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson Mumtaz Balak said an escalation of tensions is the last thing they want.
Pakistan considers the people of Iran as our friends and brothers, and we have no interest in escalating any situation.
The Business and Trade Select Committee held a hearing on the Post Office scandal on Tuesday, and they had some serious questions for Post Office Chief Exec Nick Reid alongside Fujitsu's Europe Director Paul Patterson. However, it was a frustrating experience with neither man able to give details about when they became aware of issues with the IT system, including the possibility that terminals could be accessed remotely. Patterson did at least apologise on Fujitsu's behalf to the sub-postmasters and their families.
Fujitsu would like to apologise for our part in this appalling miscarriage of justice. We did have bugs and errors in the system, and we did help the Post Office in their prosecutions. For that, we are truly sorry.
Neil Hudgell, a solicitor for 400 people, including 77 sub-postmasters affected by the scandal, said only 3 of his clients have been compensated in full so far. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown weighed in on the scandal from Davos. He was Chancellor at the time the faulty Horizon software was introduced, and he said that he felt ministers were misled.
I feel that all of us who were involved in any respect in this have got to take some responsibility for this, but equally at the same time, I think we've got to distinguish between those people who knew there was a problem and those people who negotiated the contract in the first place.
The World Economic Forum was on this week in Davos, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was busy meeting with as many heads of government and potential supporters as he could in the Swiss Alps. He's still waiting on a $50 billion US support package that is tied up in internal US politics, while a €50 billion EU aid package has been blocked by Hungary. Russia continues its assault even in freezing conditions, and President Putin says it is impossible to take away Russia's military gains in Ukraine. Zelensky was warning that Putin embodies war and will not stop at Ukraine.
If one must fight against Putin together in the years ahead, isn't it better to put an end to him and his war strategy now, while our brave men and women are already doing it?
As the diplomatic negotiations in Davos continued, the UK has been one of the countries pushing to give Ukraine access to Russia's frozen assets. There are approximately $350 billion worth of funds, which Lord David Cameron, the UK's Foreign Secretary, said there are legal, moral and political justifications for handing over to the Ukraine. Cameron was also keen to point out that even if things are in stalemate at the moment, the war has not gone well for Putin.
This has been a catastrophic disaster for Putin. He's been cut off and sanctioned by a good part of the free world. On sea, on the Black Sea, he's faced another catastrophe where over 20% of his navy has been sunk by a country, Ukraine, that only has a very small navy.
Ukraine claimed credit for a drone attack on an oil terminal in St. Petersburg on Thursday as part of what was described as a new phase in the war. It came as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held his annual press briefing. It went on for 3 hours as he shared his views on various topics relating to Russia's war in Ukraine. He criticised the newly signed security agreement between the UK and Ukraine, calling it half-baked, and suggested that Ukraine will not be able to decide when or how to end the conflict because the US is calling the shots. He also said Russia can no longer trust the West and spoke about what he described as the benefits that the war had for Russia and its people.
The special military operation has unprecedentedly united our society and helped to purge it of people who, in general, did not feel that they belonged to Russian history and Russian culture.
Still to come on the Standout 7, Taiwan gets a new leader, it's awards season in Hollywood, and tributes to a Radio 1 legend.
Right after this.
Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free news podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Welcome back.
Taiwan elected its new president on Saturday, and China's not happy about it. Lai Ching-te had served as the country's vice president since 2020, and his victory extends the Democratic Progressive Party's 8-year rule. But he's been branded a troublemaker by the Chinese government, who have been urging Taiwanese voters not to support him. Lai Ching-te thanked voters for standing up to China in his first speech after winning the election.
Through our actions, the Taiwanese people have successfully resisted efforts from external forces to influence this election. We trust that only the people of Taiwan have the right to choose their own president.
Awards season really ramped up this week in Hollywood, starting with a gala night for the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, even though the festival doesn't officially kick off until next month. It saw Barbie star Ryan Gosling presented with the Kirk Douglas Award for Excellence in Film. It recognises those who've made lifelong contributions to cinema, and Ryan joins legends Martin Scorsese, Dame Judi Dench and Robert De Niro as a recipient. He got all reflective on his career during his acceptance speech.
I've gotten to go to the moon, be a motorcycle bank robber, a getaway driver, waltz through the stars, be an elementary school teacher, albeit a crack-addicted one, become a replicant from the future, a gangster from the past, a lovelorn stuntman, and most recently, thanks to Greta, a 70-year-old crotchless doll.
The Critics' Choice Awards were up next, and Robert Downey Jr. was enjoying his time in the spotlight. He started the awards season with two big wins. First, a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor in Oppenheimer, and now he's added a Critics' Choice Award for the same role. He was delighted at the ceremony in Santa Monica, but he didn't miss the chance to recap on some previous critical reaction to his movie work.
Critics' Choice Association, they've given me such beautiful feedback, really... just so many great moments, and some of it's so poetic. I just want to share some of their thoughts with you. The first one's kind of like haiku, sloppy, messy, and lazy. The next one's more metaphoric, like Pee Wee Herman emerging from a coma.
And in a packed week, the Emmys took place early on Tuesday morning UK time, and the winning streak continued for the cast of The Bear and Succession. Kieran Culkin and Sarah Snook did the double once again, taking home male and female Best Actor in a Drama Series, with creator Jesse Armstrong picking up a Writing Award and Best Drama Series. Better Call Saul continued its losing streak with 53 nominations and no wins, but Quinta Brunson made history as the first black actress for over 40 years to win Best Lead Actress in a Comedy for her role in Abbott Elementary. She also created the show and was justifiably proud.
I love making Abbott Elementary so much, and I am so happy to be able to live my dream and act out comedy. I say it every time, but I just love comedy so much that I am so happy to be able to get this.
Annie Nightingale made history in 1970 when she became the first female DJ on BBC Radio 1. On Thursday, she passed away at the age of 83 following a short illness. She got her start in the industry at 19 years old, writing a music column for a local newspaper in Brighton, where she was the only female reporter. There, she was able to interview the Beatles, whom she struck up a close friendship with. Her break into radio came in the 1960s, where she started doing features for the BBC, but it took several years before she was able to break into the Radio 1 lineup, where she remained the station's only female presenter for 12 years. Here she is on Desert Island Discs in 2020, talking about her early experiences on the station. Rest in peace, Annie.
I think actually the BBC also wanted it to fail. I think they thought, and we'll give it a year, and I think they were, would be quite happy if it had not worked out. So it was a huge pressure on all of the people who worked in Radio 1 to make it happen. So they made their DJs super famous.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.